Hey everyone, what's up? This is Dr. Charlie Johnson, physical therapist. Appreciate you checking out my channel, and I'm really excited to share a story. I'm joined here by a woman named Dawn. Say hi, Dawn.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Look, Dawn really suffered for quite some time with some back, SI joint, kind of left glute and leg stuff for a while. Tried lots of different stuff and was just really struggling. She was a member of my Glute Relief Accelerator program and still is as we kind of wrap things up here. But just wanted to bring her on to, number one, inspire people who are struggling with these issues. And number two, kind of give some insight as to what she was dealing with and then pull some nuggets, right? If you're watching this and you're dealing with some type of back, butt, or sciatica problem, know that even if you've tried lots of things, A, it is possible to heal naturally in most cases. And then also B, right, there's a specific process that I recommend that people follow, a very systematic approach versus just trying random things. So Dawn, we're going to kind of jump into things if it's cool. Start off by sharing. I just want to, first off, just say I'm so grateful to have you here and appreciate you sharing the story. And then if you can just start off with sharing kind of what you were told was wrong with you. Many people watching this have been given probably many different diagnoses. So I know you've had multiple things you were told was wrong with you. So can you just kind of kick it off with what that diagnosis or reason why you were hurting?
Yeah, in my case, I really didn't end up with a true diagnosis.
Mhm.
It started out that it was a very mild problem, mild pain. And, I told myself, okay, if it's still there after, 4 weeks or 5 weeks, I'll go in and see someone. It was very, very minor. So the first time I went in, it was orthopedic and ended up having x-rays. And that told me that it was degenerative changes
Mhm.
in my spine and also lumbar radiculopathy. So from there, I was sent to PT. Another physician said, once that process didn't work, I was told that it's most likely muscle, put on muscle relaxants. And then I went to see another specialist, and that led me to believe it was SI joint related.
Got it. Okay,
So that's
so
kind of how my journey started with multiple. I really didn't know. I still don't know, actually.
yep. Cool. All right. Now, in all fairness, did you really so you probably wanted to know. So lots of people start off the process of thinking, hey, if I figure out what's wrong with me, because I have to have an answer, or if I figure out what's wrong with me, then I'll figure out what to do. Give me some insight as to like that, maybe that logic and how you started off the process before the program and now kind of maybe where you're at. Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, I wanted to know
Mhm.
because in my mind, I thought, well, if it's this particular area, there would be a certain set of treatments that would follow it, whether it would be stretching or surgery or injections or whatever that might be. I needed to know the exact location so I could pinpoint the treatments to guide me.
Mhm.
And ended up, it was just a very frustrating process for me. I'm in the medical, I'm in the medical field. So certain things that I know how they should work didn't go that way for me as a patient. It was contradictory to what I've always, you know, taught myself or knew what I should do for my patients in the clinic. So that was just, the whole process was very frustrating.
Yep. Got it. So you started off with diagnosis specific treatment, right? I've got to figure out what the problem is. Once I figure out what it is, then I can do appropriate treatment, right? And so you started off imaging, which is where a lot of people start, right? And then it's like, hey, radiculopathy, which you could argue in very lay terms if anybody's, watching this and dealing with some type of back, butt, leg pain. Radiculopathy is like this pinched nerve in very lay terms because you've lost function to the nerve, feeling loss, strength loss, something like that, and probably having some pain, numbness, tingling going down the leg. All right. So you started there, then you got PT specific to like this radiculopathy, right? And so give me an idea, like what did that PT look like, by the way? So you went, you got radiculopathy, they give you a script, they hand you the paper, you go on your PT and they're treating this radiculopathy. What did that PT experience look like?
The PT experience was the PT, wonderful person, didn't really believe that that was the case. Wasn't really, didn't really buy into that diagnosis as well. I didn't either, just based on, the presentation and the actual consultation, like the questions I was asked and things. It just wasn't a very thorough consultation in my opinion. And so the PT, I think, had a little bit of a hard time determining what route, what they should do, because didn't really know if it was, back related, or maybe it was glute. I had just started, after like a year and a half off. I was very active, lifting weights, boot camps, took like a year and a half off, and then I was just getting back into it. So it was very possible that I could have had some kind of exercise induced injury. So the PT just wasn't sure. It was just a really hard case to guide, like what's the best path. So he gave me a lot of isometric types of exercises, 3 exercises that I completed like morning and night, multiple reps. But it was, aimed at the glute and the back, both.
Okay. So it was like, hey, let's try to kind of target both of these things, and then let's see what happens. Let's see if it works.
Right. But even with that, I mean, I wasn't in a lot. I could bend down, I could touch my toes. I wasn't in severe pain. It was very low on the spectrum. And so it was just really hard for him because everything he would ask me to do, I'm like, yeah, I can do that. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't hurt,
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just a little bit. I really only went maybe a handful of times. It was through the holidays.
Yep.
Plus I had some travel. So I did a lot of it at home on my own. And at the end, it maybe was like 5 treatments. I'm like, hey, I'm like 97% better. It's really not bothering me. And so I graduated from PT basically. And then the following weekend, I just woke up and I had intense, like, high pain. And that kind of started me the path into, more specialists, trying to find exactly what was wrong. MRI, which I never had, but that was my goal. I wanted an MRI to find out what was the cause.
Okay, cool. So now, right, knowing what you know now, having gone through the program, right, being equipped with some different like knowledge and tools and understanding, right, how has that perspective shifted, if at all, right, as far as like, hey, diagnosis, and then we need that first, and then we can go into this treatment because that is based off the diagnosis, and then we'll get this result, right? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
I think the reason, one of the reasons why I joined the program is the community. Once I found out about the community was like a big part of it.
Cool.
My husband, he, bless his soul, he's wanted to do everything he could to help me. I mean, things were coming in the door, like, we'd see something on the internet and, purchase. Yeah, it has a 30-day return policy, like things, just all kinds of gadgets. Right. And so, he's trying to help me. I'm asking him tons of questions. He doesn't know the answer. I really didn't have anybody to like help guide me. So for me, it was like the program is that everyone in the program they know what you're going through. Right. They're all going different levels. They're all going through the same area, the same process. They are in pain. There's some that have come out of the program that are still very active in the community. So you have hope, that things can get better. So that was a big part of it. It's just not, I felt like I was, in the system that I was kind of on my own on this island. And there really wasn't, I just felt there wasn't someone that was just helping guide me, through all these different people and processes and things. So that was a big part of why I joined.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. And can you paint a picture real briefly here of what life sort of looked like before? So I think it started in 2023, right? Like early in the year with something, and then it kind of wasn't too bad. Then it obviously got to a point, you went to PT, you tried lots of different things. At some point, like you mentioned, it did go away pretty much, right? When
Mhm.
was that? So like, give me a rough timeline of symptoms when they started, right? And then when they kind of went away, and then when they flare back up again, and then kind of where we're at now, obviously.
Mhm. So when I finished the first round of PT, that was about the end of January
Okay. Of this year.
and of this year. Yeah,
Yep.
my symptoms actually started in December, in 2023. There
Yep.
were like multiple periods in there, but when I actually finished PT, it was January of this year, 2024.
Yep.
And I was graduated on a Monday, and by that weekend, I was in the worst pain that I had been throughout like the entire process. I mean, it was, you know, 8 to 10 pain scale. So that's when I thought, okay, I'm not going to do this on my own. I'm going to go, to my general practitioner, find some guidance.
Mhm.
But that just kind of led me down a path of still trying, the still options were mine. I could do another round of PT. I could go see a chiropractor. And so I ended up going to see chiropractic care, and that was February and March time frame. And that turned into like I wasn't progressing, I wasn't improving. Um, and that turned into high intensity laser therapy because the chiropractor couldn't understand why I wasn't getting better, with that care as well. So that was February, March timeframe. And then I joined your program in April.
Cool, cool. Awesome. And what were some of the big triggers, like the big things that were, troublesome for you, as far as activities, positions, kind of stuff within your life?
Mhm. I couldn't, I couldn't sit.
Yep.
I couldn't tie my shoe,
Hmm.
couldn't put on my socks, just general day-to-day things that you just normally don't think of,
Yep.
right? I was struggling with. And, it was just, again, my husband, right? He's like, can I help tie your shoe? No, no, you
Yeah.
can't, because I need to do this on my own. So just those little simple, things, it just um, really caused, couldn't hike anymore. Driving anywhere was difficult. This, same as the sitting, driving.
Mhm.
Um, and even sleeping sometimes was problematic for me.
Mhm. Cool. Okay, so then you come into the program, right? And we talk about this process, right? And I know it's this online thing. Curious, were you skeptical to join the program? No, it was like this
Yes.
online thing. Like, can you tell me
Uh,
about that?
yeah, I've never done any virtual care. So this
Okay.
was my first experience with it. And, I didn't know what to expect. You always think, I don't know, when you've always done things in person, you feel like that's how you get to know each other, or you gain that personal, experience.
Yep.
So I was very skeptical, but at that point I couldn't drive anywhere. I was driving to the chiropractic, and by the time I got there was
Yep.
20-30 minutes away. I was pretty much in tears because it hurt so bad to drive. So that kind of opened me up, like, okay, I can be at home, I'm in my comfort zone, I can probably do things laying down if I need to, I don't have to sit or drive anywhere.
Yep.
And so that kind of opened my eyes to doing something virtual.
Cool. Well, in the weirdest of ways, I'm glad that was. I'm glad that happened. All right. Anyway, so let's start with this. So then you joined. You came into the program, right? You enrolled, right? As part of the process, we shoot you kind of some initial recommendations, things like that. So you're sent a video, right? You get access to an online program platform, if you will. We call it school, right? There's a classroom in there for learning. I'm a big about teaching people what they need to do. A community, sort of no BS community, right? Where we're all in this together. We've all gone through the process, and we understand that there is a process to follow. And then obviously there's coaching, right? There's mentorship where you can jump on calls and stuff like that. Talk about like the kind of the process that you went through to start feeling better. So, what did it look like? Like immediately, what was the first thing you did kind of off the bat to start moving in the right direction? Do you remember that? And can you kind of walk us through the process roughly?
I think the first part for me was to just take a step back from everything I was doing, which was recommended.
Mhm.
Um, you know, like like even through physical therapy, I mean, I was working out. I was stretching like crazy. Like you cannot believe how many, I don't even know how many hours I stretched during the day
Yeah.
just because it felt better in the moment. So I think just stepping back away from everything and, you know, going through some of the readings, the modules, just learning about the community, learning about everything that was to offer, that just kind of gave me a sense of, okay, I have something else to focus on other than my pain.
Yep.
Because I was to the point where I printed out a calendar. I'm like documenting every little tiny thing. Oh, today I'm pain level this, or today I'm, you know, seeing this doctor, doing this. Every single day I'm so focused on the pain. So
Yep.
that I think was my first like aha moment, like, okay, it's okay not to think about the pain for a minute, right? I have something else to focus on. It's reading, you know, it's reading or watching a video or doing this or doing nothing, and that's okay.
Yep. Yeah. And were there action items within that, right? I want to set the stage. Sometimes people come and say, like, just tell me the exercise to do, right? Do we start with like the exercise to do?
No, no,
And
you
why do you
don't.
think we don't do that?
And I think just because there's so many exercises that may work or not work for a certain individual. Like the program is very individualized based on how you're feeling and what you can and can't do, like your strengths and your weaknesses, right? And I think that was partly when I was going through PT, that was part of the problem because I was given these 3 things to do. And did they help? Did they not help? Like there was no tracking mechanism while we were doing that. So
Yeah.
this program is very focused on like individualized and collecting data based on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You were the data collector. Right.
Right.
And so I want to highlight that because that's really important, right? So you mentioned like, hey, I went to the chiropractor and they were like confused. It wasn't really working, the PT, this and that. And my question was going to be, but I didn't want to interrupt. It was like, well, how are they measuring progress? Right. Aside from, hey, Dawn, happy Tuesday. It's sunny out. Like, how are you feeling? Right. Like, what did that look like? Did they have any tracking mechanism? I think we know the answer.
Not really. I mean, they ask, you know, what's your pain level today? The downside to that is if my appointment would be at 8 a.m., my pain level is going to be different than if it's at 4 p.m.
Yep.
because that's just how I am, right?
Yep.
In the
Yep.
mornings, it might be worse or it might be better, right?
Yep.
Everybody's different. So that's the inconsistency from that tracking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
But through
so
the
then,
program, it was more right at this, like on this day, at this, you know, every week on this day, you know, you're testing certain movements,
mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's just more consistent.
Yeah. And so that's one of the things that I say, hey, look, you can't manage what you don't measure. Right. So to go to the process real quick, right? You highlighted on like, hey, I was doing all of this stuff. All right. I was stretching for more hours than I could count. I was doing I was doing 3 things instead of just one thing. I was doing 5 things. And, so you're doing all this different stuff, getting all kinds of different opinions and just sort of in this like negative, chaotic feedback loop. All right. Doing more, getting worse, not really working, getting more frustrated, trying more, etc. And so like I said, we don't start day one with exercise. You do get there, use movement as medicine. But the idea is we need to first step back. And if we're going to approach this scientifically, right, we really need to do what we call calm muddy waters, not poking the angry bear mentally and physically. And so we step back and we say, look, you cannot exercise the bad diet. You could do all the exercise you want, but if your environment is not conducive to you getting better mentally or physically, you're probably not going to be able to figure it out. All right. And you're not going to be able to out exercise that. So we start by having you step back. You said it a good way, zooming out, kind of getting a baseline. And then you can't manage what you don't measure. So one of the first things we do, and you were awesome at this, I'm going to adopt your measuring system probably shortly here in the future, is that we have you track 6 metrics, right? 6 numbers, if you will, related to motions that are feeling yucky, not so good, right? And then also triggers or things which were painful in life, right? So for you, it was sitting, driving, and I can't remember if it was walking or sleeping. I'd have to look. But
Just walking.
okay. So sitting, driving, and walking. And then what we can do is we can track systematically week to week on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday at a certain time, right? And we can see, because you're tracking these numbers, not me, because I don't feel what you feel, right? You're taking your own experience and you're putting it into something that's objective versus emotional. And you did an awesome job. I think instead of 6 numbers, you just like, you sum them up to one number, and then you could see this like total summation of a score, and you could see it going in the right direction.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That gave me confidence. I think that, hey, it's working. What I'm doing is working.
Mhm.
And I think that's a big part of it is just, you don't know, right? Yeah, today, oh, I feel a little better. Today, I feel a little worse. But if you're trending things over time and your numbers are getting better, then it's working.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that the reason that's useful, and I found it really useful for people, is because again, when you're in pain, you tend to go insane. So if you're watching this right now, you might feel like I'm trying all this stuff and I don't know what to do. And is this guy real? Is he not real? Like, wait, and there's another YouTube video that's popping up right now. It's recommended, right? And so it's so easy to get lost in all this information. That was one of the things you put in the case review. Like, hey, there's just so much information out there. And so we try to synthesize it inside the program, right? Take the best of both the mind and the body and say, look, I've kind of left no stone unturned. I've tried all these different things and like, I'll just give it to you. And there's a process. And when you can go from being insane because you're very emotionally involved in the process to one where you're more objective and you're literally just looking at numbers and you're like trying to fool yourself that today's a good day or a bad day or it's sunny or it's cloudy and you're feeling happy or sad, you don't have to worry about any of that, because how do those numbers impact decision making? Well, if you're headed in the right direction, do we change what we're doing? We do not change what we're doing. Okay. Even if one day out of the week wasn't so good, if the numbers are still headed towards the destination of feeling better, in this case, the numbers are going down, right? Then we can use that data to stay very scientific, less emotionally involved, more objective. And then we can make decisions based off of logic, not just like freaking out. And on the good days, we think we figured it all out. And on the bad days, well, then nothing works. Okay. That's not the way it is, folks. We've got to average some of these things out so we can eliminate some of the bumps in the road. Really cool. So Dawn perfected our tracking system. And instead of looking at 6 numbers, she kind of took them, put them together, and she looked at one number weekly, which helped her determine which way she needed to go and what things she needed to change or not. I want to highlight on this. So there was a little bit of a turning point in the process. So you started making progress rather quickly in the right direction within the first, I think, 2 weeks. We actually ran a recent study taking like a random sample of people. So we found that 94% of people see improvement in the first 2 weeks, which is really cool. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean you're 100% in 2 weeks, and you definitely weren't, right? But we started to see things head in the right direction. And then we got on a call because your problem was sitting, right? So we got on a call and you're like, Charlie, I think I'm heading in the right direction, but I'm still kind of stuck and I just can't sit. I think you were a little down still at that point, right? For good reason, I get it. But what was that like? Like what happened there? So leading up to the call, you were working on some stuff, modifying how you sit, changing some things, etc. And then on that call, like what was something that was useful for you?
Yeah, I think what happened there was that I was still like, I had been avoiding things for quite some time because it hurt to sit. So I'm not going to sit.
Yeah.
Right. So instead I would, maybe kneel or lay on the floor. And during that call, I think you challenged me. Okay, just try sitting for 5 minutes. That's it. Or 2 minutes, whatever it was. And so what I did was I ended up taking positive things and sitting. So I, grabbed my favorite food, turned on a good favorite movie or show. And I said, okay, I'm just going to sit here for a few minutes because, and see how it goes. And I mean, it just went really well. Like I sat, and then when I started to feel, sensations or like I couldn't sit anymore, I just observed them and kind of put them, to the side and said, hey, I'm sitting, I have my favorite movie on, I'm, eating my favorite food. And from there, it was almost like a light switch, like just flipping it on and off. At that point, I knew, and I was kind of buying into maybe this was a more mind body thing that was going on. And I think once I actually believed that to be true, then I knew that I could stop it. I could change the course of my path at any time. And then I was in control.
Yep.
Right. The pain wasn't in control anymore. I was in control of how I was going to process everything.
Nice. Yeah, that was the big because I knew you're skeptical. I chatted with Nick after he chatted with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I should try it." I get it. Not sure what else I could say, right? Other than shoot videos like this. But at the end of the day, yeah, what you got stuck in is like a classic pain fear loop, right? Whereas like what happens is if forever is watching this, it doesn't matter if it's walking, it's sitting, it's driving, it's bending. I've seen it happen with gardening, swimming, jumping, baseball, like any sports where people start to link an activity with pain. All right. We call that like a learned response. Now, it very well may have started off as a radiculopathy or an SI joint problem or something like that. But what happens as you're kind of attempting to allow that to heal is you go into avoidance mode, right? Because something hurts, right? What happens the more you avoid something? The more you reinforce that it needs avoiding. The more you reinforce to your brain that it's dangerous, right? Sitting equals bad for you. Driving equals bad. Again, it might be walking is bad, or bending is bad, or gardening is bad, or whatever is bad, all right? And so when you were able to do a lot of motions, you were like, hey, but I can't really bring it on. And we had some other pieces of the puzzle that weren't really matching up and weren't consistent with a radiculopathy per se, or maybe fully with an SI joint. And here's the weird thing. Sometimes you just don't know ever. People aren't going to want to hear that, right? But you could say, well, what was the cause of Dawn's symptoms? Well, primarily, right, you could say maybe it started with structure, but then it started to look like it was more of the mind. And so then we had to shift kind of our approach, but we didn't get there day one. We had to sort of go through this process to see what she was responding to and then iterate it based off the data, not the emotion. Then when you got on that call, I was like, something's fishy, Dawn. I don't know. I think there's something going on here, right? And so then I gave you permission to say, hey, look, is it possible your brain's making a little bit of mistake, that you've been avoiding this thing for so long that we actually need to confront the monsters under the bed, the sitting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if every time you sit, you react to it, danger signals. And so we started to have you progressively sit, and instead of running from your symptoms, we said, hey, look, you've got red light, yellow light, green light. Green light is you have no symptoms. Here's the stinky thing about that. The cool thing is that you're like, well, I don't want any symptoms. But the stinky thing about that is that you can't get over your reaction to symptoms if there is no symptoms to change. So if you're avoiding it constantly, then you're never going to be able to show up to it, right? And teach your brain that those feelings that you're having are safe and that sitting is actually okay. Sitting doesn't have to be bad, right? And then you got this red light where things are like a 50 or a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, just really yucky, not tolerable. We can't sit in those situations because it sets off the bells and whistles. But I said, hey, you know this yellow light? That's the perfect opportunity. If things are a 10, a 20, a 30, a 40, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4 for anybody watching. I use a 100-point scale. All right. I have no evidence to suggest, especially if you get up, Dawn, the symptoms, go away rather quickly. I have no evidence to suggest that that's causing an inflammatory process or something like that that you need to be avoidant of. So can we, right, sit with that? And by the way, when you feel symptoms, it's actually an opportunity for you to practice viewing them and reacting to them in a completely different way versus like, let me look for the softest cushion in the house kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. So that's cool. I think that was actually the turning point, is maybe not a specific motion. I'll talk about that briefly, but the exposure over time to sitting, knowing that, well, I had this belief that when I'm sitting, I feel pain and hurt equals harm, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just that I have a sensitive nervous system and maybe I just need to practice showing up to this thing and changing my reaction and less so the symptoms themselves. Does that resonate? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was doing that. I was, multiple cushions, many cushions, or just avoiding it at all. I purchased a standing desk for work, so I was standing more. And when I did sit, it was seconds. I'd sit, I'd stand, I'd sit, I'd stand. I mean, it was just, I think, once I realized that I could do it again and I'm not in extreme pain, it just it went very quick, actually.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I sat through, I'm sitting now, I sat through, multiple graduation college graduations, and drove 2 hours to get there. So it's quite different now.
Cool. And for anybody watching, you say, okay, well, I'll just start sitting. I'll just start sitting progressively or lifting more, whatever. Absolutely. You could take that approach, right? But the difference is in knowing and having the faith and understanding that you're not damaging yourself. All right. Right. So if you're sitting, you feel symptoms and your brain's still saying, oh, shoot, that's my pinched nerve. Right. I'm compressing my sciatic nerve. My SI joint is doing this or that. It's going to be really hard to take that graded approach, knowing, right, and actually believing with conviction that this is damaging my body. So the key is to pick up the different pieces of the puzzle, work with somebody or not work with somebody, try to do it yourself, right? To identify what is the real driver of this and why do I still have symptoms? And is it possible my symptoms are not due to as much structural damage at this point, even if you started with an injury? Or am I okay to sit through this? Or am I not okay to sit through this, right? And so that would be a key takeaway as well. All right. Did you use any specific motions, Dawn? Just a couple last things here. In the process, what did that motion process look like? Did we give a sheet of exercises? Like, what was that experience like?
Yeah, there were multiple exercises that you could go through. You pick one out of the sheet of exercises, and for me, it was like a pelvic drop-in, almost like a reverse lumbar stretch. So I did that. That was the only one I did 4 times a day. It ended up being, and I still do it, not as often, but a couple times a day. And when I get up in the morning, I think just out of habit, probably, I'm still doing that one today.
Nice.
But it was just the one. It was just the one motion, the one movement that I did throughout the program.
Awesome. Now, some people would find that really hard to believe. They'd say one motion, right? Like, how is that possible? One motion could help. What are your thoughts on that process? Because the other thing is like, well, how could one motion help? And then it's like, well, there's a sheet of exercises that I could have gone through. So everybody gets the same exercise possibilities. How is that a customized approach?
Well, you're only doing, like, each individual's just choosing the one that works for them. So you would do one if it hurts or you don't like it, you move on to the next one. And you just keep moving on until you find the one that feels good. It feels good, makes you happy. You're able to do it, right? Physically, you're able to do it, and mentally, you're able to do it as well.
So this is a process I call hunting for motions, right? Where it's like, hey, there's only so many stinking ways you can move your body. You can go forward, back, right, left, and then you can twist it. And then you got different body positions, and it creates this grid. We call it a motion menu. Okay, Charlie, but what is my pattern? So like there's many different options I could try. Should I go forward first, backwards first, to the right, to the left, twist? What should I do? Well, we help you identify pain pattern. And then from there, right, it gets you in the ballpark of here's the motions that are most likely to help. And then we can start testing, treating, retesting to find, like you said, the one that feels safe, feels good. Yuckies are off the table pretty much for everyone, right? And then also causes an immediate improvement. We want to see an immediate change in symptoms. Otherwise, if the light doesn't turn off after you replace it, it may work in the future, but that would be weird, right? And so we only want to see things that create an immediate change. And so, yeah, you go from this idea of like, well, I've tried everything to solve my problem. I've tried all kinds of different exercise. I'm sure I would have found it by now. That is part of the problem. You had no process and you were doing everything, which means you weren't doing any one thing and nobody gave you a process to figure out what that one thing was for you, right? And so we try to keep it as simple as possible. So if movement is medicine, we do as much as needed, as little as necessary. And usually that's one thing. That's it.
And it worked.
It did work. So now, just wrapping this up, right? Where are things at now? So I know you post in the community, right? Doing fairly well, I think, overall. But how long have you been in the program? And then where are things at now? Can you just paint a brief picture of how it's helped you out,
So it's been about 10 weeks since I started the program. I'm doing much, much better. I'm actually not even joining the community as much because I'm, you know, I forget that I'm had pain, or I forget that I, you know, went through this, but
You got to give
yeah,
back now, Dawn.
I
You are
know,
giving back
I
with this.
do. I have to give some insights back and some of the tweaks I've learned, right?
Yeah.
Some of the tweaks I've learned along the way. But yeah, it's, you know, um, in the car, multiple hours going to, you know, sitting through my son's baseball games, walking my dog on our favorite trails, um, just shooting baskets. Again, you know, just starting to get back to those things that are, you know, deemed normal, like a
Yeah.
normal part of your life. So my next step is doing more of the extreme, you know, getting more brave, confident, and continuing to do, you know, some of the play pickleball and some of the things that I was doing before this even. Definitely much improved. And yeah, I'm just thankful that I found like everything when I did. Because I was actually fairly short, you know, I didn't have the pain. Some come in and it's, you know, years in the making.
Yep.
And I think because I found it so soon, that's probably one of the reasons why as well that I was able to convert as quickly as I did, because I found, I'm just so thankful that I found, you know, found you and found the community, I think at the right time.
Yep. Cool. Well, I appreciate that. And so that's another message too. I can't tell you, unfortunately, how many people I chat with who say, well, it's not that bad right now. Right. Or like, well, I've only had it for a few weeks. You even started off with this, right? And I get that mentality, like, well, let's just see if it goes away. Right. But at the same time, if you can start the process earlier, heck, I wish people who didn't have any pain understood these concepts. You know, I think that everybody should have access to this stuff. And so ideally you catch it early, because when you're, as you start to groove some of those neural pathways and you start to learn to experience pain longer and longer and longer, not that it becomes harder, but there's definitely more obstacles there to overcome. So yeah, I'm glad we caught you not too far down the path.
Yeah.
So if you're in
And that's
pain, yeah, go ahead.
that's another point, is that, you know, this is I mean, if I ever come back into the situation, I feel like I have the tools now that I can navigate it very easily. And it's a lifetime, right? It's not just a moment in time. I mean, you know, I have a life, you know, I have many, many years ahead of me. So the fact that I have the community still, I can come back anytime and, you know, reach out to you, reach out to the community. Um, that's a big advantage. It's a
Yeah.
huge
Cool, cool.
advantage. Mhm.
Yeah, it's the idea. We never take away access to the program, the platform, so people can come back at any point. The goal is to mentor you, to teach you how to solve your own problem. And you could say bad business model, right? So we don't rely on years of visits, right? We want to teach you. It takes some time and effort and energy to that you need to invest, yes, to have that happen. But then we're here to sort of lean on, and we'll mentor you through the process moving forward. So really awesome stuff. All right, so look at this. Look, we're going to be here to continue to support you, Dawn. What would you say to anybody who's on the fence? It's sort of a wrap-up question here. And one thing, you know, I get is like, hey, well, what if this doesn't work? Or how can you be confident it'll help you? Or sorry, help me? You know, is this going to be something else that doesn't work? What would you say to someone who kind of has that mentality coming in of skepticism like you did and are sort of on the fence?
I would say do it. Actually, I mean, I was skeptical myself, not ever doing a virtual. I'm in the medical profession, right? So I rely on physical conversations and presence.
Yep.
But it's definitely don't wait. Don't wait until, you know, your pain is so bad that you have no other options. I mean, this is an option early on in the process and the pain. And yeah, I definitely am thankful that, you know, I found the group and I was able to join. So that would be my advice. Just, you know, jump on it. The team is wonderful. They're there to support you. And I've really learned a ton. If you like to learn, you know, I definitely learned learned quite a bit about myself and about pain and how to process it. And I have all the tools to do that now going forward.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. And so look, if you're watching this and you're like, Dawn, thank you, Dawn, for sharing, right? You have some type of back butt sciatica problems. We definitely don't know everything. All right. But I've sort of dedicated my life to traveling all around the world to learn different things. And we synthesize it, right? So this is my exclusive specialty. We work with people all around the world. In fact, Dawn, like, where do you live? I'm in Pennsylvania. Where are you at? Can I ask that?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Okay,
Yeah.
so she's in Wisconsin, right? And we chatted a couple times, but otherwise, right? Dawn essentially learned how to heal herself using the power of mind and body, right? And the process and a system to help her discover what was really going on. By the way, we never came to actual diagnosis, if you will, but big ugly things aside, right? It still could have been X, Y, or Z. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we take that diagnosis. You can translate it into how it's showing up in your life via yucky emotions, via pain triggers, and you can treat that pain experience. And it absolutely works for most people. All right. And so if you're a self-starter and you want to learn, just like Dawn did, how to heal yourself, and you're tired of kind of relying on medical system, even though I know you're in it, so I'm not saying to go against it. But if you're a little bit of a rebel, right, and you want to try a little bit of a different way, then what you can do is you can do just what Dawn did, which is basically click a link somewhere below this video. It'll take you to an apply page. You can select a time to chat with a member of my team. And then what you can do is follow instructions to submit a detailed case review. So I review all cases personally. If I don't feel I can help, I'll just let you know. If I do feel I can help, just like Dawn, we'll lay out a plan. We'll talk about what that looks like and get you started on the path to relief. So thanks, Dawn, for checking this out. I appreciate it. And yeah, if you're interested in some help, just go ahead and click the link below to apply.